So the name of my piece is Winding Waters, and my theme has been water, so all three of my pieces that I picked have to do with water. My first piece is Shenandoah, and the music that I got for this came out of a book that a lot of high school students use if they do a lot of solo voice singing. It's called Folk Songs for Solo Singers, Volume 2, and everything in there is by Jay Althouse. So that's the arrangement of that I used. And some history on Shenandoah. Shenandoah was a song that was sang when people were fishing on the Missouri River. And Shenandoah was the name of the Indian chief who was in charge of everybody. There's a lot of different arrangements of this. There's band, orchestra, choir, all sorts of different arrangements, and it's a pretty well-known song. My second piece is another choral piece. It was written in 2003, and it's by John, I think it's pronounced Leavitt, something like that. But it's River in Judea, and this is typically arranged for SATB choir, and this is kind of a biblical piece. There's some discrepancies about whether it's actually referring to a biblical thing or not. I think that's definitely up for interpretation, however you want to interpret it, but it is about a river in Judea. And then my final piece that I have is Bridge Over Troubled Water, and this is a fairly recent song. It's by Simon and Garfunkel, and it came out in 1970. And the phrase Bridge Over Troubled Water actually was, I think Simon found it when he was at a sermon or something like that, and that phrase just stuck with him. And so he went to go write something new, and he wasn't really sure what he was going to write. And he sat down, and that phrase had just been stuck with him. And so he decided to use that phrase. And then he just kind of sat down, and very quickly, I think he wrote this song in like an hour is what it said. So he wrote the song very quickly, just based off of that phrase, because that was something that he had heard that just stuck with him. And so he based his song off of that. All of my pieces do happen to be from the American origin. So starting to look at the music, the way I said it, I don't know if this is quotation the right way to do this, but after I had my pieces, I thought about what I wanted it to sound like, and so I already had an idea of like who I wanted to take the melody. In certain areas, or like with certain pieces, I knew who I wanted to have the melody and like kind of what my harmonies were going to sound like, because in this piece, especially towards the end, it gets very heavy. There's just a lot going on. And so I kind of thought about each melody line, each harmony line, and thought about like who I wanted to take that specific part. So this whole thing is pretty slow. It ends at 65 for my tempo, a quarter note equals 65. And it just kind of stays that slow pace throughout. There is a time signature change, so sometimes it feels a little different, but that quarter note does stay steady throughout the entire thing. Looking at my introduction, I wanted to start it light, and just kind of very soft and like kind of ease into things. Kind of like starting with a little stream and then like getting into a bigger river, since it's about water. So I did start with my flutes and my oboes taking the melody, and then other parts just kind of slowly join in. My introduction does go from the beginning to rehearsal mark A. So then rehearsal marking A to rehearsal marking B, that's going to be my first piece, which is Shenandoah. Shenandoah is also what I used as my introduction. It's almost a round that I used in the beginning, with the melody, and then the flutes took the melody and oboes had the melody also, but it was just kind of offset by a few beats, and then everything kind of lines up, and I use a fermata there, right before A, to kind of get everybody together again, to lead into that pickup to go into A, and start the actual piece. So at the end of Shenandoah, I have some eighth notes going on, kind of back and forth motion. And to me, the eighth notes kind of represent like moving water. It's just kind of going back and forth. It kind of flows. And so I wanted to use that idea as my transition to kind of flow from B to C. And then here I don't have a key signature change. I do have a time signature change. So towards the end of my transition, I kind of use those longer notes to kind of get a feel to get into my next piece. So we're now at rehearsal mark C. C begins River in Judea. And after all that kind of ripply flowing motion, we have 3 quarter notes. And I just really wanted more of a brass sound to this piece. Kind of a more royal sound, I guess. So I don't know, in my head had trumpet playing this. That's why I gave this melody to the trumpets. And so this piece, we had our time signature change, so it feels like we almost slowed down, and that kind of builds up the energy at C, to kind of, and along with that crescendo that gets us into our melody or our chorus. So I just like the way that builds with the time signature change and the crescendo to get into the chorus. So we finished River in Judea, and now we're transitioning from D major to E flat major, which was kind of challenging, to say the least. And on top of that, we also are going back to 4/4 from 3/4. So there's a lot going on in this transition. And you'll have to look in the actual score because it's not on the screen right now. But what I did was I used the idea from my last piece, from Bridge Over Troubled Water. We kind of had a dotted quarter note, eighth note kind of thing going on that I liked, that I wanted to use in this transition. So what we did was we did a 1 chord, a 4 chord, a 5 chord, and then we did a flat 6 to get to E flat major. It's not what I expected from this piece, but I like the way it turned out. So we're at rehearsal mark E. This begins Bridge Over Troubled Water, and my goal with this last piece was just to keep building to it. So we start on a softer end, and then once we get to the chorus that everybody knows, of course that's a little bit louder, but then towards the end, and you'll see this in the final score, not what's on the screen right now. So E to F is just your basic Bridge Over Troubled Water melody, and then I kept that idea going because I like the idea of Bridge Over Troubled Water kind of being like my unity piece and kind of ending everything and tying everything together. And it takes us back to the time signature that we were in. It just kind of rounds everything out nicely. So that's what I used in my closing also, and just kind of like extended, like used the melody again. But at the very end, so F starts my closing, but I have some eighth notes going on to really like build the tension. And then there's like a big release with a fermata. There's a very juicy chord at the end. And then I have some cymbals going on also, just kind of to build. We're getting louder, and then we also have like a big retardando at the end, to end on that chord. And so I just really wanted that to build up, and just kind of like, it ends very differently than how it started. It started with Shenandoah. It was very, very flowy, very smooth. We also used the idea of eighth notes in our first transition. So I kind of wanted to bring back that eighth note idea, just, to bring back like the the rippling, the flowing kind of thing that I talked about earlier. And so I did bring back those eighth notes and ended on that chord. If I was gonna put like a level on this piece, I'd probably put it like maybe a 1.5. It's weird to think about because the program I came from, I'm not sure if we could play this. Looking at instrumentation, there's no way. We just didn't have the instruments. Maybe if we did it middle high school, but I just don't know if that was like a level that we could have. Also, like having an oboe or a bassoon, even having like a bari sax just wasn't very realistic for us. There was no way we had a tuba or euphonium. So it's weird to arrange something for, it was just strange. So this would definitely probably be not a small school arrangement, but it would have to be like an easier, maybe like an upper level middle school, freshman, somewhere along those lines. But anyway, this is Winding Waters, and it is Shenandoah, River in Judea, and Bridge Over Troubled Water to finish it out.